horse I ride is old, but he has served me well. Coat like old tobacco, rich and warm. He is old, but he is sound, and my rein chains ring like bells. We fit well together as we glide above the stars.
Howdy there, I'm Matt McKinley and we're burning daylight.
Howdy there, daylight burners. Happy Wednesday. I hope the week's treating you well. It's been a crazy, I guess it's been about a week. And so, yeah, been wild. Weird stuff going on, but hey, the world keeps on spinning, and there's still cool people out there to talk to. So that's where I'm here for today. So, got the Knight family out of Elko County, Nevada. Really neat conversation. Not at all what I was expecting, like a 100-year-old ranch family. Telling me the story of how they've been there really forever. But I talked to some folks that have been all over the world, had a really unique outlook on life, and really enjoyed visiting with them. So we'll get into that. But first, I got some sponsors to help me keep putting this thing on every day. So let me tell you about them. First off, we got Stetson Ranches up in Fromberg, Montana. They are a multi-generational ranch family looking to go for many years into the future. It's a diversified outfit, and that's by design, so they can keep this thing going. You know, it's hard to make money just running cows anymore. So they got industrial hemp. They got some of the best quarter horses that you can buy out there right now. These are really nice horses. I'm talking old school foundation quarter horse bloodlines, ranch types. But they're really ready to go any which way you want to go, whatever discipline, direction. They're really nice horses. Like I said, some of the best bloodlines: Zanpar Bar, Two-Eyed Jack, Peppy Sam, Badger. Nice job putting this group of mares together. They're going to bring you a big, shapy, heavy boned, athletic horse with a good mind to them. Just the kind of horses you want. Be hard pressed to find better stock anywhere. She does an excellent job. And then the cornerstone of their outfit is being a ranch. Of course, they run cows, and they're running a really cool direct consumer pasture to plate beef program. These cattle are raised right there in Fromberg, Montana, on the Stetson Ranches place. And they're fed out, delivered to your door on dry ice for $6.95 a pound. This beef is prime every single time, and you're getting burger, all for an eighth of a beef bun, all the way up to a full beef. The eighth is going to be about 65 pounds, and it's every penny. Some of the best beef you'll meet, some of the best meat, and I highly recommend them. Go check them out online, StetsonRanches.com. Go give Jesse a follow on Facebook and Instagram. That's Jesse with one S, at Jese Stetson, and let them know you heard about it. Next up. And my good buddy George Topless running the best damn sale barn in North America, located at 1369 12.5 Road there in Loma, Colorado. They got a sale coming to you twice a week, Monday and Friday. Monday with the feeders, Friday with the way up sale. Both of them starting at 10 a.m. Mountain Time, and kind of a loser, but we'll forgive you because you can head over to dvauction.com and click on the Loma Live tab when there's sales going on. You can watch the sale live and bid on it right from the comfort of your own home, naked in a beanbag, eating Cheetos or whatever it is that you do. We don't care to know, but you can still watch the sale and even buy some cattle, whatever you want to do. It's awesome. George's doing a good. Check him out online, lomalivestock.com. Facebook and Instagram. And if you got any questions or you'd like to consign with them, holler 970-858-9988. Next up, we've got Mr. Ryan Erickson and Oxbar Custom Cowboy Gear. Ryan's been at it since 1995, building all sorts of cool cowboy shit, buckles, bits, spurs, chaps, chinks, all custom made to order. And the guy is, he's got really high standards, and I know he's got even higher standards for himself. So you're getting a good product. And by time, he's a man of his word, fella, and proud to have him on the show. So go check him out on Facebook and Instagram, Oxbar Custom Cowboy Gear. Tell him that Matt sent you. And then finally, last but not least, we've got the official boot maker of Burning Daylight, Jake Houston Custom Cowboys Houston Boot Company of Virginia City, Nevada. They're handmade, made to measure, and 100% custom cowboy boots for the working cowboy. Jake does an awesome job. I mean, the boots he made me, holy shit, guys. They look good. Some of the best looking boots out on the market. They fit like a glove from day one. Pretty remarkable, really, how well they fit. But that's, like I said, they're made to measure. He does it all by hand. Send you in the mail, or he can meet up with you and get you measured, or take orders if you'd like. You can give him a holler 775. Oh shit. 775-315. Yeah. 315-3022. That's 715-315-3022. Or you can go find him on Instagram at Houston Boot Co. All one word. Give him a follow. Check out his stuff, and let him know that you heard about it on Burning Daylight. And to all the sponsors, remember we've got the Fancy Loop competition that Ryan and Nick Lute are donating the prizes to. So we've got a pair of baby Chihuahua spurs coming from Ryan Erickson. We got 2 rawhide Hondas hand braided by Nick Allen Lute. And that competition will be going through March 1st. So if you got a Fancy Loop video, post it. Use the hashtag Burning Daylight Fancy Loop Friday and tag me in it, and we'll get you posted. Whoever gets the most likes on my page will win their choice of the Hondas or the Spurs. And it's a cool contest. I like seeing all the good roping. Keep it up. Keep sending tag me and all that good stuff. So I think I've rambled on enough here this morning. So let's get into the show with the Knight family out of Elk County, Nevada. Let's get into it. I just like to talk cows. I like to talk Western lifestyle, and you guys seem like have a pretty neat history. So that's why I asked you.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I guess if you guys would introduce yourselves, and then we'll have a talk about cows and horses.
Okay. I'm Sarai Knight, and my husband is Jeffrey Knight. And then our oldest son, who's not here, is Jasper Knight, and his wife Aspen, their little boy Jubal. And then next oldest is Justin, and then Paige, Sophie, Sailor, and Jimmy, and Joseph. We skipped one boy. He's third oldest, and he is in Portland, Oregon right now. He'll be home in July.
Portland.
So there's 7 kids and 1 grandchild.
Awesome.
Yes. He's serving a mission for the LDS Church.
Okay.
Yes.
I was gonna ask. I know it's kind of stereotypical and all. But big family, being as you know, in your part of the world, I assumed you were probably LDS, but I didn't want to just straight up assume it. But there we go. We got that out of the way. So,
Well,
what's that?
You assumed correctly.
Okay. I was going to ask anyways, I've been doing a lot of research on the Mormon and the Mormon community and just particularly settling the Great Basin. I think it's a very under taught part of American history for such a small group of people, very like-minded group of people, to have such a big impact on settling the West. I really wasn't aware of it at all till just a couple of years ago, and so I've kind of took a deep dive into the whole thing, and it's just interesting. There's a lot of stuff that I really admire the especially the early Mormons for just the grit and just kind of will to make something for themselves. It was pretty interesting.
Yes, they are definitely a part of the American history, the West history.
Yeah. So, how long has your family been on your place?
We've been here for 7 years, but we go back. We've been in Nevada for over 10 years, and my husband worked for Simplot.
Okay.
Up in Grandview for a while, and then from there they transferred us down to a ranch, Rancho Grande, and then from there we went over to Wells. We had a little stopover in Russia for about a year and a half too.
Oh wow!
And then we came back. Yeah, we came back to Nevada.
Okay.
So we like Nevada, even though we're born and raised in Idaho.
Okay.
Our kids haven't been though.
Yeah. I'm pretty new to Nevada. I've been here. We're coming up on 4 years. My wife grew up in Reno, but I'm from Colorado originally, and but I like Nevada. I thought I knew a lot about ranching and cowboying a little bit, and then I grew up kind of on the very eastern edge of where the BLM type stuff starts, and then I get out here and I was like, man, it's it's big out here. Everything's just kind of big, and it's
it is big.
It's been neat learning about it.
Yeah, lots of history. We like the Nevada history, and my husband, he's particularly likes it, and so he'll share things that he finds with all the rest of us. So.
Well, neat. I'm a big history guy in general, and but particularly just the West. It's such it kind of goes like history that, as we know, through just through prehistory, even that people come, they conquer, whatever. But there's something that seems particularly unique about the American West, because it was just pushing to get away from civilization, it seemed like. And then there's this little spot, and it's not little, but compared to the rest of the country, Nevada, Idaho, Arizona, and Utah, just kind of still that old. You go there to get away from people, it seems like, and it's like a throwback type era.
Yes, it is.
So was your family, were they part of like the original Mormon exodus out to the Great Basin?
Both of our family history does go back to leaving and then coming west. And when we go back far enough, we both can trace relatives that were a part of that. And my husband's, was it your great grandfather?
Yeah, originally we're from Ireland, Scotland, and England in our ancestry, and they came to the United States, either joined the church there in England, or en route they joined, or at some point they joined the church. Anyway, from Iowa, they made the trek west in hand carts, covered wagons.
Wow.
We have my mother has quite a few of the paraphernalia. They had a rolling pin, some Mormon tea, some old cups and containers, and quite a few like blankets and stuff that came across on the wagon trains. And so we all ended up in Salt Lake, and I have some grandfathers that made the trip, or kind of wagon bosses, I guess, if you call it now. We went back and forth, several groups this way.
Well, that's pretty neat. I'm this research I've been doing. I'm going to make a multi-part podcast series of it, and I want to do. Need to do some research yet, but I want to do part just on the hand cart because if I remember right, it was only about 2 years that they did the hand cart thing before they decided that it was just too dangerous. And then, but man, they that's a whole different type of tough. Is taking all your belongings from Iowa to Salt Lake City, and you push it the whole way. Push it or pull it. I don't remember. Did they have like a harness or something that they strap into, or is it just like a push cart?
It was a cart, probably 5x3, 5x5, and big wagon wheels on both sides, and then it had kind of a horseshoe out in front where the older people, the man or the wife, would just pull it.
Okay.
The kids would probably push it from behind.
I see.
And that was a devised way because of just the economic situation of most of the, what we call the early saints. They had been moved around and harassed, and so they didn't have a lot of material goods, and they spent one winter building lots of hand carts, and then they took off. And those that could afford oxen or horses used them, and those that couldn't, this was a way to get west. And then there were certain things of sugar, and there's a list you can find of what actually was placed in the hand carts. Today, the youth of our church all over the world, but particularly in the Great Basin area, they do reenactments, and they'll pull hand carts for 2 or 3 days. Growing up, I did several back in the 80s. And so you go out in the desert and kind of branch off with these, create a family. So you got the feeling and the experience of it. And then you pulled your hand carts out through the sagebrush and down hills and across creek beds, and then just camped out there, and they dumped chickens out so you could kill chicken and eat it. And they tried to make it somewhat real experience. And so most of our youth have kind of gone through that. Our kids have, several of them. And they just get the idea of what their ancestors went through pulling a handcart through the sagebrush. And we'll do it again like for 3-4 days. And when they dance at night, they're required to the girls wear the long skirts and bonnets. And then the young men are kind of in period type clothing. Of course, there's regulations now, different kind of stuff you have to follow going across the BLM. But they're really popular, and it's a great way to kind of have some appreciation for what they went through.
So it's kind of like the Mormon Mountain Man Rendezvous type deal, where you just
pretty soon.
Yeah, that's kind of cool. We would do a trail ride on. It would end on Memorial Day weekend. My dad had I can't say it was a dude ranch because we did it all on BLM property for the most part, but he would have city folks come in, and we'd do this week-long wagon drive deal. And it was, a pretty good ride. We'd cover about 20 miles a day. And when we'd end up at this little lake in Oklahoma, and they had a mountain man rendezvous like one canyon over, and then then we had a ranch rodeo, and so it was pretty neat. And that's kind of what it reminded me of, just everybody dressed the part of the old days, and you kind of roughed it for a little while, and it's pretty neat. And then I always look at whether it be out here in Nevada or just like where I grew up on the eastern plains of Colorado. So the old joke is you can watch your dog run away for a week, and it's just you're driving, you get into the highways are so straight and flat. You just kind of get into a daze when you're driving, and it's kind of like Nevada. It's a long ways to anywhere, and you just get in like a haze driving, and you just wonder, like, I just covered in an hour what it would take a typical wagon train to drive in a day, and there's nothing out there, and then you never know. It looks flat as can be, but all of a sudden you'd have a band of Indians pop up out of a little draw or something, and it's just, man, the uncertainty and everything of you had to be just on edge all the time cruising across the great American desert, or making from what they call it winter quarters there in Iowa all the way all the way to the Great Basin, Salt Lake Basin. And man, it's insane when you think about it today. They were some hardy people.
Yeah, there was a lot of accidents along the way. A lot of parents buried their children. They would get sick. Sickness was a big thing. Accidental shootings was one of the biggest concerns. These, the early saints, the early Mormon pioneers, they weren't military type people. I mean, real ranchers. They're from England, Eastern Coast, mostly farmers, kind of gentleman type, pioneers of that nature. And so the guns were usually in the wagons as they pull them out or get something. There's a lot of diary accounts of just accidental shootings. And then when the man died, or the wife, that placed even a bigger burden on there. But a lot of children were buried in shallow graves, just rocks placed on there. Wolves were a big threat back then. Lost children wandering off. You think of all the things of just a family making a trip today that you're concerned about. Just small kids wandering off, getting lost in stores and that. So all that kind of went on, plus the hardship of pulling a handcart. And then Sundays, they didn't do anything. They followed the scriptures, kept the Sabbath day holy. It was a day of rest, recuperation, which they greatly needed.
Yeah.
But they would try to do 10 to 15 miles a day would be about it.
Oof. Yeah, and then like if you had a wagon, you were looking at maybe 40 miles a day, somewhere in there, with a horse-drawn wagon. But yeah, a handcart, that's man, 10 to 12 miles at a time. That's pretty slow going from Iowa to Utah, man. That's you had to be determined.
Yeah, and a lot of neat stories about oxen wandering off, and prayers were said, and they'd find the oxen, or they were dead. But that could put a family in quite a situation. Real similar to the Oregon Trail. I mean, the Oregon Trail was going on. The early saints, pioneers, would kind of be on a little bit different trail. So there wasn't a lot of mingling at that. But, along the Oregon Trail, there were pianos and tables and dishes. And it was just like your I-80. There was a lot of trash, pioneer trash that was alongside that. A lot of dead horses. The accounts that I've read, a lot of people said that the stench was so bad from dead animals along the trail, and of course the choking dust, and in that dust, kids kind of wander off or they get run over by wagons.
Yeah.
So, it was really quite the hardship, but they loved it and they enjoyed it. And those that made it never did complain, that they had to do it. At some point, when the continental or the railroad came in, then, they made the trip on the railroad. But so there were the handcart folks versus the railroad folks, that had a little bit easier as they came west.
Yeah. Well, I was, in my research, I realized like there were a lot of cattle traders coming up from Arkansas, and like some of them Mormon, some of them not, but they all had to go through Utah. Like a lot of them were pushing beef out to the gold mines in California, and they had to go through Utah, and it seemed like the Mormons coming from California into Utah picked up a lot of that vaquero tradition, and that's a big reason why you see that particularly the buckaroo influence so prevalent through Nevada and Utah and Idaho, because a lot of that started from like Southern cattlemen driving cattle to California, and then Mormon pioneers coming back across the Sierras into what was Deseret at the time, and so you look like you're a pretty buckaroo type. So I was just making the connection there. But Elko, it's about required, ain't it?
Yeah, there was the influence of the Southern Texan vaquero life. Back then, also, you had the California Spanish vaqueros, and they were coming up with the Miller and Lux Company, and they were coming all up into this country. And those vaqueros were trailing cattle, over the Sierra Nevadas into Oregon, Nevada, and parts of Idaho. And a lot of the cattle here came from that area, and a lot came from down in Mexico. A lot of these ranches were stocked with longhorns that came out of Mexico. And back then, those cowboys went, they rode down to Mexico, probably southern Texas, and then they trailed them back up here. And so longhorns were a part of Nevada history, and then kind of moved into shorthorns the way, that I read it. And then the Hereford was really the cow that made Nevada. And now it's mostly black.
That's almost identical to where I grew up. I mean, it was Hereford country for the longest time, and really till certified Angus beef came out, when they pretty well turned the whole market black-hided. So, yeah, that's kind of the same process. And then I guess it was in like the 30s or 40s when they introduced the Brahmin influenced cattle into where I was kind of on the edge of what they call the high-low country. And
right.
And so that was kind of when they started bringing in the eared cattle a little bit. But yeah, the Hereford, man, they were real popular for quite a while.
They're a hardy animal. The Angus Association has done a great job at promoting their breed, and so there's always a little premium for a black animal. I see a few changes, into that. People are kind of branches out, but the continental European breeds made their run here, and you saw a lot of big bone, big frame cattle, and I think they had their heyday, and everything's kind of getting back to a moderate size in this area. So, but there are ranches still will run a kind of a Brahma influence cow.
Yeah, kind
of down in your central Nevada.
Yeah,
in drier place.
Yeah, they you start seeing a little bit. Especially get around that Tonopah area. There's a lot of eared cattle down there, but it's still pretty pretty well English and continental breeds up here, but you see a little bit of ear, but you don't have to go very far south where you get it into it pretty thick. It seems like. Now,
Yeah, that's what I've seen.
Yeah. So you guys are up in Elko County, is that correct?
Yes, we are.
Okay. Yeah, that's well, it's pretty country. Are you kind of in the Rubies?
Just north of them. The Ruby and Humboldt's would just kind of be this to the south of us.
Okay.
We're moving towards the Jardidge Wilderness.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Charleston area.
I see. Right on. I haven't been up in there much. That I hear it's real pretty though. That's big open country up in that. I guess all of Elko County really is. Once you get outside of town, it's just big open country.
Yeah, it is. A lot of variation, in Elko County. There's, of course, it's the basin and range formation. So you have big mountains and then a big valley and a big mountain and a big valley. And a lot of the ranches are established somewhere close, in the foothills of the mountains for the water. And then the grazing extends all out through the valleys. A lot of alkali type parks. As you get more north, you're going into Idaho, and then a Waihe area. You have a lot of canyonlands, sagebrush, a high desert type ecosystem there. But so we're around quite a few juniper pinyon area. On this ranch, we don't have that, but a lot of the surrounding ranches, a little bit to the east, to the Wells area, and the Wine Cup, and going up through Idaho that way.
Okay. So, what are the winters like up there? I know Elko itself gets pretty dang cold, and gets some snow. Are you guys kind of pretty typical for you guys?
Yeah, it's fairly cold. It can get minus 30 to 40. I've seen that a few years ago. This winter is I don't think, we've hit maybe 0 degrees Fahrenheit, but it's a very open winter. Every once in a while you'll get some of those where we still have, dust on road. We sit at 5,300. So we should have more snow than this. We should have several feet of snow. But for some reason this winter we're not getting a whole lot. It was a very dry summer. So a lot of people were herding on grass, and I would say in this area they're pretty nervous about the upcoming spring unless we get some snowpack.
Yeah, that's kind of the way it's been over here. There's just not much snowpack up top. We just haven't had much moisture at all. It's I'm pretty new to this. Like I said, new to Nevada, so it's it's striking how similar the climates are from where I grew up. And we had a little more annual precipitation, but we didn't have any of the live water running through. I mean, when Zebulon Pike came across, that was what he determined the Great American Desert. And so I think we averaged about 11 inches of rainfall back there. But like I said, there's hardly any live water, especially now. I mean, it's all irrigated out there. This water issue is I think it's gonna rear its ugly head sooner rather than later, and I think it's gonna be pretty serious.
Yeah, it's one of the biggest threats. I think ranching is you can have all the land, but if you don't have the water, you really don't have anything. And, quite a few ranches will haul water. They have water trucks. Because it is public land, it's very difficult to just drill a well. That takes years now to do NEPA and things of that nature. So if you do have some private ground, that you have the rights to it, you can drill a well. But the early sheep herders that came through here, they homesteaded quite a few places. And so that's the places where they would shear or bed or lamb or whatever. So you have these little 40 acres around, all over. And that's kind of where your water sources are that you can develop. But for the large part, it's mostly government land.
Yeah. It's, I read some article the other day about they were talking about a market for water futures, and as free market as I am, that one scares me a little bit. That's, when you're talking about speculation on water rights or water shares, from New York out to, anywhere, in rural areas, that's just a spooky thought.
Yeah, we're seeing it right now. The larger cities, particularly Vegas, is trying to pump water down from this area. They keep coming further north, and so that battle is ongoing. And the ranches around Ely, Lund are seeing it a lot more, and so they're running short of water in Vegas, and what they want to do is take the water from up here and pipe it down.
My dad is involved with a series of court cases over this same thing, but they're for drilling. But it's kind of, they have to sidestep around it to get approved for an agricultural well, and then you can sell off the water rights to that, and that part of maybe the entire state of Colorado. That groundwater is pretty much unregulated, and there's regulations in place, but it's a good old boys club, and it's a whole big mess. And I don't think there's enough people out there that realize exactly how dangerous that is to our way of life in general.
Yeah, we've seen an increase in activity with the Nevada State Water Engineer. We've got electronic meters on all our wells. We have pivots, and we have a fair amount of irrigation here. So we're the last couple of years having to report that on a quarterly basis. When I came here, that wasn't really something that we did, but with the Pershing County lawsuit down at Lovelock on the Rye Patch Reservoir, that's got the water, who has first rights of the water and different things. So they're sorting that out. But so you've seen an uptick in water rights in this area. And even though all this was adjudicated way back when, it still is going to be a fight, particularly in the future. And most of these basins are closed basins now. Our ranch fortunately has good water rights, and some of these basins are still open, but it would be pretty hard pressed, to get a well drilled. It's getting harder anyway.
Yeah,
irrigation.
What's that now?
For an irrigation well.
Okay, yeah, it's man, that's something you could go into for days on that topic, but it's kind of scary. The world changes whether we want it or not, but there's some things that we sure like to hold on to for as long as you can, and keep around for forever if you can. And I think I don't know, this year has put more doubt into what I thought I knew than any year on record, but it's really crazy seeing how the world is around, or you see it on the news, and and on social media, and then you step outside and and life keeps just on trucking along, and you can't really tell the difference until you start looking at the news and stuff, and it almost doesn't feel real, and I don't know where it all heads, and it's a weird time we're living in.
I would agree with that because everything's been pretty much normal for us here on the ranch this last year. It's just when we go to town.
Yeah.
And yeah, there is a difference, and it just makes us really, really grateful for where we live.
That is right.
It's just kind of the same old we. And so that schooling didn't change at all since we homeschool. So that's been nice for us. But I know other people, it's been a real struggle of a year last year.
Yeah, and so my wife teaches in public school, but we're homeschooling our kids, and it's amazing how just how different the two systems are. And so we have a kind of I think they classified it as a micro school or something along those lines through the church here, and so they still actually go to school for two days a week, but we at the end of the day, the parents are in charge of the education, and boy, like you said, it really makes me thankful for small communities. Our valley has maybe 1,500 people. There are many Californians coming over the hill every day, but for right now, we have a pretty small valley, and it's a good community, and I've never been more thankful for that in my life. I've never been more thankful to grow up in a rural area and continue to live in a rural area than I am now. But I guess going back to your early saints, I mean, that had to have been their life every day for most of the from 1843 through the end of the 1900s even. It was uncertainty all the time, and it's just, I guess we're finally kind of getting a glimpse of that now, but it's strange.
Yeah, the early pioneers, they were big on education, and they really pushed that. I think coming from the roots that they did. So you see, the Brigham Young University and Brooks College. Now it's called BYU Idaho. There's BYU Hawaii, and there's always been a push for education in that way. That education can be done at your kitchen table, or at a university. My wife's homeschooled all ours, mainly because we've lived in some, I wouldn't say real remote areas, but I mean, we're a long ways from, and we lived overseas in Russia, and so it just carried on with us. But our oldest 3 or 4 have been to college a semester, and they've got straight A's, scholarships, and some are going to continue on. So it certainly can be done at home. A lot of people, I think, realized that they could do that with this COVID pandemic thing going on. That they had to actually kind of educate their own children. So it certainly can be done.
Yeah, yeah. I think there's one of the positive things that's come out of this past year was the fact that a lot of people realize that, hey, we might need to start paying attention to a little bit more to what our kids are being taught, and that's a good thing. There's been a huge push towards homeschooling this past year, and I think that's a positive. Yeah, it's funny. My folks valued education as well, and I still I don't know. I guess I'm just curious about life, and so I'll get on just in researching the Mormons. That was just something I saw on a TV show. And it's, well, I never heard about that before. And then look it up, and that was fairly accurate. So I'd never heard about the Mormon forts. So let's do some research on the Mormon forts, and then you go down. Turns into a rabbit hole, and you guys are well known for your record keeping. So there's a lot to sift through, and it's pretty neat. I admire that, and then just the self-reliance that was kind of pounded into the early Mormons straight from the pulpit. Was self-reliance and record keeping.
Yeah, I think my wife probably talked a little bit about that. But growing up, it was just part of our culture to have a year's supply of food. Now, not 100% was ever achieved. You'd have 30. I think every LDS kid growing up, down in the basement, there were these 5-gallon buckets of hard white or hard red wheat or something. And so you didn't really know what to do with it. But a lot of food storage, a lot of canning. It was just kind of a cultural thing. And so, when things like this COVID deal goes, it's kind of a natural. But we also learned some things that we were short on. Of course, the toilet paper range kind of took everybody by surprise.
Yeah, nobody saw that one coming. But
we kind of realized that we were short on a few. Yeah, nobody really understood that. So we kind of had to get on that too, just because, it just creates its own storm. But, feeding a family of 7 kids and living on ranches, of course, you always have your beef and we have chickens, and we drink a lot of raw milk, and, you just do things like that. So it would make us nervous. I'm not even sure how to raise kids in town. I don't even know exactly how to do that. And they're around us all the time. We work with them and then school them in the afternoon. And so they've been working since they were really young. But I think Sarai's family, they were big canners and food storage. And again, it was kind of a cultural deal that you just kind of grew up, and now you kind of realize how important it is.
Yeah, for sure. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say on the record keeping, I really, you always try and take notes here and there, but last year, I gave myself permission to write things down for a family or to type. And because I can type a lot faster. And so last year I started a family journal that I just write a little bit about what we did every day. And then I continued that last year, meaning 2019. And then I continued that in 2020. So to have a record of what took place this year, for not only for the world and for our family, it ended up being about 115 pages. And that was just writing a little bit about what happened each day. And I just am grateful that I did that for last year in particular. And so that's a good record for our family.
We're kind of proofread that and go through, make sure we add names and places and dates, and because you forget about that in 30, 40 years or 10 years. So we want to make sure that people that came and helped and day worked and, at brandings or at shipping, and all that's in there. And so the kids will have that. They can read it to their kids. And we'll be able to print that out and put it in kind of a binder form.
And no deciphering of weird cursive or bad handwriting. It's already typed. So
that's pretty neat.
Saved everybody some work.
There you go. That's pretty cool. Yeah. That's pretty cool. Now you said you spent a couple years in Russia. How'd you end up there?
We just kind of answered an ad. I wanted to do some international work at one point. before we finished cowboying, I guess. And so when I was with Simplot, I was invited to we spent about 2.5 weeks in China, and we were going to expand some feedlots over in China and Inner Mongolia. And so I, with a handful of the Simplot guys, went over there. I was invited because they knew that if we got a feedlot up and going in China somewhere, that I would move there and, take the family and go. So we traveled all over China and then went into Inner Mongolia and right up close to Korea. So we got to kind of explore that. And I got a taste for that international work. And so when we came home and anyway, I'd left Simplot after about 9-10 years. And I had a friend that had gone over to Russia and he said that you need to come over and take a look at it. And we were kind of in a transition of trying to lease a place maybe, and then came from corporate ranching. And so we just went over there. First, my son and I went, he was 16 years old, I believe at the time, and we went over there to try it out for 2 months. And we left a couple of days after Christmas and came back, of course, in February. And then we liked it, and the pay was phenomenal. And they were building ranches and kind of coming out of that communist era of ranching, farming. And so there was no infrastructure. And that's how we got started. It was actually a Russian company called Miratorg, and they were hiring American cowboys to go over there. And they were shipping thousands and thousands of cattle from the U.S., which I got to be a part of, and from Australia. And so we took the family over there, and because of the regulations, we had to come back every 3 months on our visas because they'd shortened them up. And so we would fly home for a couple of weeks and then fly back. And we did that as a whole family with our 7 kids and lived over in Russia. 6 kids at that time, I guess.
Well, that's pretty. How was it? How was it working with the Russian folks?
Our main duty we were kind of managers of a ranch, and there was about 4,000 head on each ranch. They have phenomenal natural resources, water, lots of grass, and they just didn't have any infrastructure, and they had no cattle after that 1989 when the wall came down. Communists kind of fell, and the state-run dairies and farms just disappeared. There was no money, so everybody just came and stole cattle and really old genetics. So they wanted to build that up. So we taught them how to ride horses, how to saddle horses, how to move cows, how to vaccinate, how to rope. And it was a success, but it was hard. They weren't around horses like that. At first, we could only get horses from Kazakhstan. And so we would get those in. Some of them were just off carts. And so we were riding some pretty poor horses and trying to rope and do that kind of stuff. But when I was there, we had about 300,000 head of cattle. And so it would go up to, they have over 1 million head now. But, there were Russians that really picked up on it, and some were just, okay with it. But they ran it differently than an American ranch. And so we had to learn a little bit about their techniques, but they would import Black Angus and they were real efficient with some things. And so my role there kind of grew, and then I was over the ranches, and then I was hiring Americans to go over there. And we had a quarantine facility in Garden City, Kansas, where cattle had to be quarantined for a duration, and then they were hauled down to Galveston, Texas, and put on ships, and we would bring over 8 to 10,000 or more on a ship, and bulls, and then I'd put an American on there. The captain was Dutch, the workers were Filipinos, the vet was Russian, and the cowboys were American. And they would go through the layers of the boat, feeding cattle and pulling out deads. And once they were in international waters, they could gut the animal and just kick it over, and the sharks would eat them. Of course, they fed a lot of sharks on the way over to Leningrad.
I bet.
So, and then they had 2 ports, where they landed, and then it was just nonstop. So we would do 72 hours straight unloading cattle. What they took were Connex boxes, cut holes in the side, dropped them on trucks, put a gate in the middle, and they'd run 30 head down to us. And those trucks would just make round trips. But you just took 10-minute naps, and they would feed you twice a day. And when that that ranch was filled, we'd go to another one. In a week they would fill that. It was the American West. Like in the 1800s, it was just in Russia, and it was quite an experience to have to see that.
I bet. I felt like that. I was working for one of the big JBS yards, or Five Rivers now, and we ran 120,000 head that first summer I worked there. And I remember on a Sunday I unloaded like 42 trucks. I weighed them up and pinned them all by myself. And I thought this had to have been kind of what those old boys loading rail cars back in Dodge City or Abilene had to have felt like. You had several different herds of 2,000 to 3,000 head apiece coming up from Texas, and all converging on Dodge City and Abilene at roughly the same time. And it had to just be nonstop for those train guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Just large numbers of cattle and big stockyards. And I heard it was around 700 trucks from Kansas to Galveston. They would circle back at times, but it took that many cattle trucks, to get down there.
Jeez.
And on the port, and then they were just all dumped out. I saw some pictures. They'd just take Connex boxes and build big corrals, and then they just loaded them up. And there's pirates out there, and they're real. They left our cattle alone, but if there was ever a ship that they could detain, they should have done cattle going across the ocean, because they calculate those feed pellets for just enough days, and maybe 3. It takes about 3 days to load and 3 days to unload. Mm-hmm. And so, they calculate the feed, because that's tens of thousands of dollars, and they don't want to waste feed, have extra on there. And you get caught. There were some storms where those guys just kind of floated around in the ocean for a while, and so they barely would make it to the port at times. But I never went on the boat. I usually sent the young single guys, on the boat, and they would take about 18, 19 days to cross the ocean. They had some fantastic experiences, on that. But, you get that world, cattle going all over the country, to Dubai and Egypt and Turkey, and a lot of dairy cattle. So that was a big international deal. But and we bought a lot of cattle from this area, Montana, and all over.
Yeah. I would imagine that'd have to be just like a floating feedlot, because I'm sure you had alleys and everything to doctor cattle while you're there, because I'd imagine it'd be a little tough to get a calf lined out on a pin on a tanker ship, or a cargo ship. Get one stretched out and doctored.
Yeah. Yeah, it was interesting. The pens are small, and then the feed pellets would come down through a flume and just kind of, and the cattle had to, a third of them, there were smaller pens. I can't remember how many were in there, but, it was like a third where it would eat, a third would lay down, and a third could kind of drink. And so they would just have to move around, and sometimes they'd lay on each other.
Yeah.
And, if something died, a bloat or whatever, they had to pull into the deal and then kick them overboard. But the lower decks, the water would come in on them. We had, remember one shipment, we had about 500 bulls on there, and that seawater would kind of wash up into the pens. And when those bulls finally made it, they were really sore and tender on their feet.
Oh,
we had kind of a hard time with them, just because that it kind of softened up and eaten their hooves a little bit. So, interesting things we learn dealing with large numbers. But I do a lot of research on the cattle drives coming out of, the Goodnight Loving Trail. That's the invention of the chuck wagon, Charlie Goodnight. And, in my opinion, he was the master. He figured it out, and he was quite the trailblazer in that. So you learn a lot about cattle when you're moving thousands at a time.
Oh yeah, for sure. What was the death loss like on those barges?
Not bad. They would sometimes run 1% to 2%.
Oh, that's not terrible.
And in the news, there was they ran out of some water or something. It was some dairy cattle. They had some disease, and anyway, they couldn't unload them. I remember listening to that. And anyway, they had to dump them all out. You get thousands and thousands of cattle on there. So a lot of dairy cattle go across, and the timing just has to be right.
Yeah.
So you can have some pretty big disasters.
Yeah, I can imagine. I know here about 3 or 4 years ago, we had a late spring blizzard there in eastern Colorado, western Kansas, and the feedlot I used to work at, they had like 200 and something deads off of just one alley from that deal. And then the dairies, they got some really, like 5,000-6,000 head, or no, they're like 20,000 head dairies down in western Kansas. And I don't know what their death loss was, but it was brutal.
Yeah, I remember that. I spent several years in the Simplot feedlot, and it had 150,000 head capacity. I was there at the end of the heyday. We were over 100,000 head, and whether it was kind of in the banana belt down there in Grandview along the Snake River, but it must, heat would be a problem in the summer. We didn't really have bad winters, but they did a few years ago. I think that was 2017 when everything melted at once and flooded them out.
Yeah.
It's. I fed cattle there. I called feed, and you got to know different types of cattle, how they ate, and it takes 5 years to actually. Be worth something as a feed caller, because you've got to go through so many seasons with so many different types of cattle, and you could tell when a storm was coming about 3 days before. The cattle would really slick up their bunks, and you could get behind on cattle, and when the storm hit, you could kind of be in a bad case. But so you really paid attention to weather and. Of course, how clean your bunks were. That was a neat experience.
Yeah, I called feed for about 3 years, and yeah, you watched the weather constantly, and now just Cowboy just riding pins. Like I don't pay that much attention to it because I got to work in it regardless. But it's just I'll glance at the weather, every other day. But yeah, when I was calling feed, 5-6 times a day, I was checking the weather because Great Plains, those storms can pop up out of nowhere. It seems like, and yeah, when you get a like a flash flood type rainstorm, that boy, you got a lot of work to do on your feed bunks, especially if you got a lot of new cattle and stuff.
Yeah, you know exactly what I'm talking about then. And we had employed a slick bunk management where, we kind of kept those cattle coming to the bunk, and we cut up their feeding into 3 feedings.
Mm-hmm.
And the last feeding, which would be after lunch, get the majority of it. But they're interesting. I rode pens there also, and so you see things differently than when you're calling feed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'd always get calls from the Cowboy crew. Pin so and so is getting loose, and that was we had a really good nutritionist, and he always said, just any sort of problem where you get a whole pin loose like that, just pump hay into them. Doesn't matter how far along they are on feed. Just if they're getting real bad loose, just put some hay in front of them. It usually clears them right up.
Yeah. Was your nutritionist Todd?
No, his name was Kendall Carr. He was for Cactus Feeders was who I worked with.
Cactus Feeder. Oh,
yeah,
okay.
Yeah. When I called feed, I was working for Cactus. So we had we were a small enough yard too where we had our night watchman do I think 3 different rounds calling feed or calling bunks slick. So we had a 5 p.m., 7 p.m., and then either an 11 or a midnight check. So you could really fine tune your feed calling based off of that.
Yeah, you can. There was some. They got a feedlot in Canada that began feeding at night in the winter, to keep the cattle warm, and that was actually pretty successful.
Yeah.
So they would their feed trucks would run at night. Cowboy crews run during the day.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. We started feed when we did a large scale confined cow calf deal there at Cactus, and we started during calving seasons. We'd feed we'd just do 2 feedings, but we'd instead of at sun up and 8 o'clock or whatever, we'd do sun up and sundown, and it seemed like it helped. It helped a few more of them cows calve during the day, and not so much at night. So it was. I don't know if there was enough data on it at the time to really make any conclusion, but it seemed like it helped. Anyways, might have been placebo. Who knows?
Yeah, when we had our cow calf, we're a yearly in operation now, but yeah, I would feed in the evening, and you try to keep those heifers up eating. If it wasn't in the day, it was, darn sure about 5 o'clock or so. It was in the early morning, so
yeah,
it seemed to cut down the night. The 10 o'clock, there was a couple of waves. A lot of them would come around 10, and then it seemed like about 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. So
yeah,
but
yeah, it's pretty.
The best way I think to calve is have a 3-year-old.
Yeah. Yeah, I know a lot of those ranches. They push them up to calving as 2-year-olds, and I guess you get an extra calf out of there if it all works out like it's supposed to. But they have a lot of issues though.
Yeah, we had just switched our last year when we had our cow herd to calving a 3-year-old, and they're just more mature, and then we weren't spending. They would calve out with the cows, and we didn't have to sit there and watch them. the downside, what people say is that you got to run a heifer one more year without a calf, but you hope that you get it on the back end a couple of years just because she'll stay in the herd. Because getting those 2-year-olds, bred up for their second calf, that's where all the problems really occur.
Yeah, that's the whole thing's pretty tough on them, and getting them bred back, that's the challenge for sure. So I guess what is it about this way of life that keeps you going at it every day? Just keep plugging along.
I think we see value in it for how we raise our kids, and know that in the long run it'll benefit them, because there's long, hard days here, and your kids are usually involved with those long, hard days. But I think the benefit is for the character and the people that they become, and just to carry on the lifestyle for the next generation, and to know that it's important to keep it going.
Yeah, I think you're right. Regardless of how the world turns, and who's in office and who's not in office, and who wishes they were in office, like, people got to eat, and people still like beef quite a bit. So I think we'll have a job for a while. It might not be the best job. It might not be the most glamorous job, but we still got people to feed. So I guess you just keep at it. I've yet to meet a cow.
I agree with that.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, it was interesting this year where my husband said we switched to the yearling operation, and we've been involved with a feedlot. We've been involved with cow calf, and then to switch to the yearling operation, you kind of just see the whole beef industry. It just kind of came full circle for us to see that it takes some time before that hamburger or steak is on your plate and ready to eat. And it's an honor for our family to be a part of it. And I think sometimes that when you're down in the ditches with your kids and doing the work and everything, and you forget to mention to them that they're doing something, they're helping with part of something that's pretty big, and helping to provide food for America and for the world. And I think we miss that, to whether it's a farmer or a rancher, to let your kids know that they're involved with something that is only, I read some statistic that it's only about 2% of American families that are involved in farming and ranching. And so to be a part of that 2%, and you have to let your kids know that it's important what we do. And it's not just long, hot days, or not just cold days for anything, but that they're contributing something. Our family contributes something.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I guess kind of off the wall question, seeing how you have seen pretty well every aspect of the beef industry, there's a lot of to do here, particularly in the last couple of years, about the chickenization of the beef industry. And I just don't ever see here in the U.S. the beef, the cattle all being a vertically integrated. Harris Ranch kind of does it to a certain extent in California, and you can say that the feedlots in the Midwest are kind of doing it from feedlot to packer, but I just don't see how it ever becomes a truly vertically integrated deal like the chicken and the pork industry. I just don't see it.
Yeah, I think they've been talking about that probably since the 50s, and it kind of comes around kind of like branded beef, everybody kind of gets excited about it. But I think the one obstacle in that is that these ranches are owned by independent people. They're kind of free thinking, hardworking, kind of leave me alone type people. And so that's why they do that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of pride to have your own ranch, even if it was handed down from, your grandfathers. We have several century ranches around here that have gone on for 100 years.
Mm-hmm.
And, they struggle at times and family dynamics and everything, but each generation learns to adapt a little bit, and sometimes they have to work outside the home to make it entirely work. And there was a golden period for ranches, and so but an animal is a very as a cow's different than a chicken.
Mm-hmm.
And built around that is a whole culture of rodeo and ranch rodeos.
Mm-hmm.
And stockman shows, and a lot of different things that you don't necessarily have in the chicken industry. And then just the culture of the cowboy is not probably going to allow that really to happen, even if you could. I don't know much about the culture of the chicken industry, the people behind it, but I'm not sure. You can pick a cowboy out of any crowd,
mm-hmm.
whether he's on vacation or at work, if he takes vacation. And I don't know if you could do that with the chicken people, because I don't think there is a culture behind chicken and pork per se.
Mm-hmm. You could give a cowboy a whole different outfit and still pick him out of a crowd.
Yeah, exactly. It's you sometimes hear the thing. It's cowboying is not what you do, but who you are.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's kind of in you, and you all your mannerisms and everything that you do and how you think is rooted back to what you do every day.
Yeah.
And other professions you can kind of change. A lot of people become doctors and lawyers because that affords them, gives them the money to do kind of what they really want to do.
Mm-hmm.
Go hiking or hunting or, do stuff like that. And cowboys have a little time off. They just go and do cowboy stuff.
Isn't that the crazy thing?
Yeah, some pick up golfing and everything, but they'll golf with their cowboy hats on. And
yeah,
if you had 2 days off, like our son, he might have a day off or something. He's out at the White Pea. It's a very large historic ranch here in Elko County, and I say, hey, things are a little slow, and I could take a couple of days off, and so they come here and we ship cattle or we gather cattle, and he just does the exact same thing that he does there.
Yeah.
So we don't go golfing or fishing, so to speak. We're not doing those kind of things. We try to do a little bit of that, show our kids that there is something on the other side of the fence. But when we go and spend time with him, we take our range teepees and go out there. And he's out at camp in a really remote place, him and his wife, and live in a camper. And he has 1,800 head of cows that he just takes care of out on the desert. They live in an outhouse, or have an outhouse, and use an outhouse. They don't live in one.
Yeah.
But we pitch our teepees there, and we go and help him and ride and just become a part of their life.
Yeah.
So I don't know pork people and chicken people, whether, they kind of have that same, I can't speak to that personally. I don't know, but I know a lot of them are in the Midwest, and so there is a type of a culture in the Midwest. But yeah, so back to kind of your question, I just think there's too many obstacles to get that done. and too many independent thinkers.
I think so too. I think I've thought about this for a while, and I think the threat's always there. I just don't think it would ever happen the way. I just don't think it ever could happen the way. I mean, it takes too long from breeding to slaughter. That's coming up on 3 years, and it just where you got a hog that can turn out a litter every 3 months, or a chicken can lay an egg every day. It's just a whole different type of setup, and I don't think it'll ever happen.
Yeah, and they'll say in a form follows function, and I think they're made a little bit for some confined operations and that nature. But every industry has its challenges, and I know the COVID has really rocked the pork industry, and there's truckloads, semi-loads of hogs coming this way, and you just buy them off the truck, and they were slaughtering them out there. So the more of industrialization, you're going to get hit more with the economic downturn of the country. And I think ranching has somewhat of a buffer between that, just because it's a lot of different pace, and what we talked about. Our life and family life hasn't changed much with the COVID deal, except when we go to town. But we, and we weren't affected. I had a sister die this year, and an uncle die, complications of COVID, but he was 80 years old. So we were affected by it, but yet you hear from people like us that really it was the best year of their life. And, one of the best years. And I think I say that because life slowed down. People became across the board more family oriented, less running around. Kids had less of a schedule. And I think parents started to become parents again, and not trying to overschedule their kids every 5 minutes.
Yeah, I think that is true. And as far as much as it has turned social media into a cesspool, I do think it's a positive thing that people are getting more political, or at least noticing politics more. Before the last several years, most of the country was an uneducated voter, and I don't think that's quite the case anymore. I think maybe they're educated on the wrong things, but I think people are at least paying more attention. And I want to believe that's a good thing. I'm not so sure some days, but I want to believe that's a good thing. But same for me. This has been one of the better years of my life, and but it feels like we're living in an alternative reality where the world outside on the way outside is burning to the ground, but here, like, life just keeps going on, and there's been some mild inconveniences, but all in all, our life has not changed much, and it's weird. I just feel like I'm watching a movie almost, and have to, this sooner or later, this stuff will affect us, and I don't know to what extent. I don't know. It makes me really glad to be where I'm at and to do what I do. So, I don't know, I guess we'll see.
I agree. We're seeing the same thing, felt the same thing as you have. We're seeing our older kids being informed in politics and things on the Constitution that, we might have learned in our 30s. They're in their early 20s and maybe teenagers, just because of social media, and they have communication with the world, where I grew up in the 80s. You had to actually go somewhere to talk to people.
Yeah. So. Yeah, it's kind of it's a bittersweet deal. I kind of long for the old days, but at the same time, I get to visit with folks like you from 6 hours away almost, and or from all over the world, and other people get to listen to it, and so at the end of the day, I hope some people from the city and outside of the rural landscape kind of listen in to something and realize that, hey, it's a whole different world out here, and all this stuff that you guys are doing in the cities, eventually it affects us, and we but as far as the day-to-day life, like, nothing really changes out here, because a cow, I've never met a cow that pardon the language, but gives two shits who's president. I've never met a cow that has any concern as to who the president is. So they need fed, they need taken care of every single day. So that's what we do.
Yeah, you're right. As I go out there on our desert, and I see cows laying down, chewing their cuds, and just enjoying the sunlight, not worried about anything. It would be neat to tell them how many meetings are done in their behalf, how many lawsuits are done in their behalf. Universities are researching about them, about their grazing behavior, their habitats, how they affect sage grouse, endangered species. I'd like to tell them how many enemies that they have, that they're grazing on public land, and how many lives that they're destroying the habitat and ecosystem. There are seminars and podcasts, and so much stuff is being done on the human side, and just like you, they just don't really care. They're oblivious to it. And it's quite a fight to keep cattle out grazing and ranching, and yet, here they are. We're here for them, and they're here for us, I guess. But so many things are going on their behalf, and they're cows at the end of the day.
Yeah, and they got the same kind of temperament as an old rancher is. Or old cowboy in general. Just you stay over there and we're fine. Let me do my thing over here with my grass, and if you get too close, I'm gonna kick you in the face. And that's I don't think we've quite reached that stage from the rural community yet, but I didn't think I'd see people from a conservative rally breaking through into the Capitol building either. So I don't know. We might be a little closer than I had thought. So I don't know. It's once again, it still seems like I'm watching a movie, but eventually some of that is going to affect us somehow or another. And I don't know.
Yeah, I think if my dad was around the Vietnam era, and my grandfather and uncles around the World War II, and they had wars from World War I on, with the Korean War and everything in between. And I think if you were to step back in the late 60s, Vietnam was going on, and the protests and spitting on soldiers and the political unrest. I'm sure people kind of thought we're about close to the end of the world in some ways. A lot of anti-government. So take it with a grain of salt a little bit. That of course, we're religious. We know who's in charge. You can get involved. You start losing your focus on what you're supposed to be doing from day to day if you get too caught up in it. And you'll take stabs here and there, and whether you're fighting against environmentalists or a political opponent. But I think in ranching, is a different profession. It's so unique that I can't think of, and I may be wrong here, but I can't think of another occupation or lifestyle where you ride one animal to manage another animal.
Yeah.
In other words, you're horseback moving another.
Yeah.
So you're working with three minds. If you include your own brain, it's three minds.
Mm-hmm.
You're probably, our brain's probably the smallest. That you've got a horse that can hurt you, but will obey you, and a cow that can hurt you and will obey you. And then if you add a border collie in there, that's the smartest of all four of them there.
Yeah.
And he has a mind of its own, and it's probably the greatest psychology major that you could ever pick, is to be on the back of a horse, moving a cow and working a dog.
See,
you can't think of anything else. And I always tell my kids.
It's funny you say that, because I've said that myself. I said the cool thing about cowboying, and like the sheer stupidity of it all too, is you're a man or a woman controlling a 900 to 1,400 pound animal on their back, so you can control the movements of another 900 to 1,400 pound, or even bigger animal, to get them to go where you want them to go. It's and then you've got the border collie. I'm not at that level of skill yet. I've never really needed a working dog, and I've had cow dogs. I've never had working dogs. So, but yeah, it's just, you're right. You get a real crash course in psychology on a cold morning, man, and a cold morning in particular.
Well, yeah, and and then you're trotting through the desert, and you have badger holes. You're dealing with other little critters. You've got rattlesnakes that can, ruin your day. You're constantly dealing with the animal kingdom, and you find yourself talking to them all day long. Mm-hmm. And so you're kind of worn out by the time you come home. And I think that's really why cowboys are kind of quiet people, is we're having long, drawn-out conversations with multiple brain sizes all day. So,
yeah,
from a squirrel to a horse. And I always tell my kids, I said, you can be whatever you want to be. I hope you stay around agriculture. I'm kind of the last in the long line that, is still getting a paycheck from it, full time, and I will till I die. But a cowboy or a rancher, he has to know everything that every other profession knows. Mm-hmm. So he has to understand human resource management. He's got to deal with employees. He's got to understand the law, the water rights laws, contract laws. He has to know everything a veterinarian has to know, for the most part. You can do a C-section, you can pull a calf. He needs to understand science and vaccinations and modified lives and killed viruses. He has to understand antibiotics, their mode of actions. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he goes from mechanics to soil science to grass management, to understand the weather. And that's just to kind of do his job. And then he has to have a level of horsemanship.
Yeah. And
you can get into leather work, build their own saddles, and the list goes on and on. Ruminant nutrition, everything, and then understand and to pay the bills, and everything in between. So really, it's kind of the ultimate. There was a movie that came out years and years ago. It was kind of a tongue-in-cheek, but they called themselves the Highly Exalted. It was talking about cowboys at the IL. And, you should watch that. It's interesting if you have.
The Highly Exalted?
The Highly Exalted, but...
I will do that for sure.
Yeah. made in the 70s, I believe, or well, around the 80s. But there's some DVDs floating around. I think you can buy them. But you really have to do, because you have to understand from nutrition to water rights and everything in between. And that's what's exciting, because you never learn everything. Some cowboys can be really good with markets. Some are great ropers and horsemen. Some are great with dogs. Some enjoy the cattle genetics. So there's a place kind of for everybody. And some enjoy the ranch life, but they really enjoy the mechanic part of it. And so, they'll do a little bit more of that.
Yeah, and then you got like the guys that just ride the rough string. You got you got a little bit of everything. There's a place here and there for all skill levels, or not so much skill levels, but specialization levels, I guess. And I've been almost exclusively feedlot cowboy, and it's not the most glamorous of lifestyle, but somebody's got to do it, and it pays me pretty well. This place I'm at treats me well, so it's a good enough place to hang my hat at night. So here we are.
Oh yeah, and there's all that world, the feedlot, which I think every cowboy needs to spend a little time in the feedlot, because it's a different part of the industry, and you need to know that. A few years ago, I went to the dentist, and he said, "Well, you might look into having a root canal or something." And he goes, "I can do it, but you have to go to a specialist." And this specialist in Salt Lake, and I didn't go, but anyway, there's dentists that just do nothing but root canals. And in our profession, you can't do that.
No,
you just can't be a root canal cowboy.
No, you gotta.
So in other professions, you can specialize so much right down to the nitty gritty, where all you do is contract law or divorces. You don't handle anything else. And that's kind of like a cowboy saying, "Well, I don't feed cattle in the winter."
Yeah, exactly.
Or I don't fix.
Yeah.
Or I don't do this kind of stuff. And so you have to do a little of everything.
Oh, yeah. And you also you kind of lose a little bit of, not so much empathy, but you lose a lot of sympathy for other hardships. Like somebody's, "Oh, my boss gave me the bad look today, and I had to rope a bloat in the middle of the pen, and he died as I was letting him down." And it's like, I could have been there 5 minutes earlier if I hadn't, stepped off to fix my cinch or something. And maybe I would have saw him 5 minutes earlier, and he'd still be kicking. But for whatever reason, I found him when I did, and he had I had a chance to stab him, but we don't have a railer truck that comes by once a week, so he'd probably if I stab him, he's probably going to die from infection later on. So let's try to get him let down, and well, it's the luck of the draw. That's how it was meant to be, and I still had half the yard to ride, so you move on, chalk it up as a loss, and come back the next one. And it's so you lose a lot of sympathy for petty stuff, I guess.
Yeah, just because you got so much on your plate every day. And we just bought a car. My daughter bought a car. She's been working, and I just kind of helped her and helped negotiate a little bit, so she understood how to do that. And they were kind of talking how this COVID, it was so difficult. They probably overpaid on buying some of these cars. It was a car lot up in Idaho, and it's hard to replace them, and things have been tough and everything. And I told them, I said, "Well, if you think this is tough, try raising cattle." I said, "At least your cars aren't dying when you're not. They're just sitting here, and you might bring a little interest, on having them on the lot, but you walk around, you show somebody a car, they like it, they pay you money, and they leave. And you've got to have some good human relations skills there. But for the most part, you're not doing 30 other things while you're trying to sell cars.
Yeah, it's a pretty simple overall scheme of things. You buy a car from the manufacturer and you sell it to the consumer, and I mean that's kind of the ins and outs of them. And there's more to it, but it's nothing like taking care of cows and stuff. And yeah, it's just the whole different scenario. I mean, it's just completely different.
Yeah.
Well, I think we've covered plenty today. I appreciate you guys being good sports for me and visiting. I sure enjoyed it. I wasn't real for sure what I was getting into with visiting with you guys, but boy, you've all seen a lot, and I wasn't expecting the range of experience you had. I was expecting more from just been on the same place your whole lives, and it was interesting. I enjoyed it. I appreciate you guys coming on. I'd love to have you back anytime.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah, obviously. And if you'd like anybody to follow your blog or anything, I guess tell them where they find you on social media.
It's just everydayontheranch.com. And then we have the Instagram page and we have a Facebook page also. So
awesome.
Either place they can follow, and it's Everyday on the Ranch. Oh,
awesome.
Thank you.
Well, thank you guys. Have a wonderful day. And we'll talk to you again.
Thank you. Thanks for being a voice for the industry and what you're doing.
I appreciate it. I don't know if I'm that yet, but I hope it makes some sort of difference. I don't know. I enjoy talking to other people that are passionate about what we do and our way of life. So it's if somebody else listens, I appreciate it too. But more than anything, I enjoyed visiting with y'all.
Same here.
Yeah, thank you, Matt.
You bet. Have a wonderful day. We'll catch you later.
The horse I ride is old, but he has served me well. Coat like old tobacco, rich and warm. He is old, but he is sound, and my rein chains ring like bells. We fit well together as we glide above the storm. And the boots I wear are old, but they have served me well. Leather like old tobacco, cracked and brown. The tops are scuffed and broken, and my spur chains ring like bells. My rowels gleam like the starlight, and up here we spurn the ground. And the trails I ride on new, even though I've made the circle many times before. For they change with every season and with every shift of light, from the summit where the clouds fall to the sweep of valley floor. And the saddle I ride is old, but it has served me well. Leather like old tobacco, buffed and smooth. It fits me like a friend, with no secrets left to tell. Astride I make the circle, and I ride where I choose. And the trails I ride are new, even though I've made the circle many times summit where the clouds fall to the sweet valley floor. And the life I live goes on, it fits me oh so well. Old and new together, evergreen. I mount my horse at dawning, my heart rings like a bell. We ride through the canyons where the air is fresh and